This is the main office of the Palmdale Water District on Avenue Q, and they're celebrating 100 years of service.
In this valley, you get water from a few different sources, mostly the State Water Project and groundwater. For Palmdale Water District, we also have the third source, and with Little Rock Creek, a third source, and that's Little Rock Reservoir. Palmdale Water District's main groundwater supplies are to the north of the office there, about a half mile between Q and P, up towards Plant 42. And in a normal year, we get about 40% of our water from that source, from groundwater. Little Rock, which is where we're going to go first, is usually about 10% of our supply in an average year, and then we get the rest, about 50%, from the State Water Project. And I don't know how this is going to work. If you have questions, raise your hand or something, and we'll try and answer them. But right now we're going to be headed up to Little Rock Reservoir. We'll go to the top of the dam first and talk about what's going to go on up there and some other projects, and then we'll go down to the base of the dam and take a look inside and show you how all that works. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them on our way. Is why this gate is closed. The gate is, just to start off with our point of view, the gate is not closed due to any operations of Palmdale Water District or Little Rock Creek Irrigation District. The gate's closed because the Forest Service chose to close it about 2.5 years ago for what they told us was health and safety issues, with the recreation area not being taken care of. We did meet with the new manager of the National Monument that Little Rock is in, and he does seem to be trying to put together a plan for the Forest Service to get the recreation area cleaned up and have it be open to the public again at some point in the future. He just started on October 1st, so he's optimistic.
Are they going to start charging to come in then, like a regular they'll start charging?
Yeah, the question was, if they open it up, will they start charging? I can't answer that. I would hope so that they have some funds to help maintain the area. It's currently about 3,000 acre feet. When we did all this work that we'll talk about in the early 90s, we increased the capacity up to about 3,500 acre feet. So in the last 25 years, we've lost about 500 acre feet of storage to sediment coming in. And that's one of the major projects we're going to talk about, is the sediment removal project to help get us back to that 3,500 acre foot number. And that 25-year delay has been because of the discovery of the arroyo toad up at the south end of the reservoir and the changes it's made to our removal project. So right now I think we'll go out here and walk up to the overlook, and we'll talk more about that. With Little Rock Creek, about 100 years ago, we decided to build this thing, and that's what took our company. We were a private water company to start with, to a vote of the people so we could get better financing, work with Little Rock, and build the original dam. And there's some really good pictures in here of the actual work that went into the first construction, and then how we had to go through finally, after years and decades of fighting the state, and strengthen that. So what you see now is essentially a concrete dam which holds the old dam which holds the water. It's a little different, but it works. But that, again, that was the origination of Palmdale Water District becoming a public agency. You know, so this place is like at the heart of where we started. And like I was saying, we did all this work in 92 through 94. Finished building some recreational facilities between then and 95, opening it back up to the public. Shortly thereafter, the Forest Service discovered the arroyo toad at the back end of the reservoir, exactly where we were going to start removing sediment. And that discovery has delayed us 25 years to get back to where we can maintain the storage of the lake by removing the sediment that comes in from the hills. Forest Service is funny about that. It comes off of their hills into our lake, and it's our problem. But if we make money off of it with some of the companies down in Little Rock, they want 10% or so off of that. And then there's a display here that talks a little bit about the sediment removal project. Essentially what we have to do first is at the end of the reservoir we have to build a grade control structure, basically an underground dam, where the top of that dam will be at the flow line of Little Rock Creek. So from that point all the way up to this dam, we'll be able to take out sediment, and then it won't erode up into the toad habitat. And this year, the EIR-EIS was certified by both Palmdale Water District Board and by the Angeles National Forest. So that's done after many, many years. We're working on all the permits right now that go with all this work. And then, assuming that all comes together, at the end of next summer, we'll build that grade control structure. And then the following fall, we'll start hauling material out of here. And when we haul material out, it's going to take 7 to 12 years to get that. It's roughly 1.2 million cubic yards of material that we're going to take out of here. It's probably going to almost fill up one of those abandoned pits in Little Rock. And then after that, we're set up to maintain the storage level at a smaller volume once we get to that level. So this applies like to the city and the planning commission as is protecting one of our big sources of water, our local sources of water. And like I said on the bus, I don't know if it came through, in an average year, this is about 10% of our supply. We take it from here through Palmdale Ditch to Palmdale Lake, and we put it through the treatment plant there that you'll see after lunch, and serve it to our customers. The other project that we have some information here on the right is what we're calling the Palmdale Regional Groundwater Recharge and Recovery Project. That's going to happen northeast of Palmdale, about 105th and L. And what that is kind of a banking and indirect potable reuse project. We're going to take some of the effluent, tertiary effluent from Palmdale Reclamation Plant, mix it at a 4-to-1 ratio with state water, let it percolate into the ground, go through all the time and distance it needs to meet state regulations, and bring it back out as potable for our customers. And what that'll allow us to do is add to our water supply by making use of the effluent in a safe way, which right now just goes to growing crops. And you know, so there's some information on that. So I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit, but that's the gist of the projects that we're doing based on our planning that we need to do to meet the future demands in our area. Any questions?
You said,
Garrett?
When was that supposed to start?
Right now we just got all the permits to drill a few monitoring wells. We're going to build a test basin to test the infiltration rates. That'll probably happen over the next 6 months. If all that goes well, we're working on all the other permits that go with that. So probably within a couple of years we could be working on that project.
the Bat Cave, what direction was that?
The Bat Cave is that way.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And I'll explain a little bit about that. You know, in the early 90s, we did the work on the dam. The big part that you can see, the concrete dam that holds the old dam. The next thing we did is we put about 6 inches of steel reinforced shotcrete on the front to reinforce that part of the old dam. And at the same time, we replaced the first roughly quarter mile of Palmdale ditch with a 48-inch pipe, which we laid into the old ditch, which in this part was a concrete box with an open top. And a lot of it had railroad ties on as the top. In the process of doing all the environmental work for this project, we discovered that maybe about 1,000 feet from the dam, there's a bat colony that lived up inside the railroad ties inside the ditch. So we had a couple choices. We could build them a new home somewhere else and try and persuade them to move. We could maybe set them up inside the dam, which didn't sound like a good idea. What we ended up doing is, for that section of the old ditch, we moved the new pipe outside and bypassed it. We put an outlet in the pipe so that any time that we run water through the ditch, some water goes through that old part of the ditch with the bat colony in it. So there, we just bypass them. And if you're really interested, we can walk down and show you where that is. But that's what we ended up doing as a mitigation for that. And that pipe also replaced the old trestle that was here. I think a lot of people from Little Rock and our staff had worked on that for years, and it was quite the rickety structure to deal with. You know, so now we have a siphon that goes underneath Little Rock Creek and comes back up into the ditch, rather than a trestle that went across above the creek. So that was a long answer. Some other questions?
Dennis, was there ever any trouble with the original dam?
Well, that was I kind of
Trouble,
over that.
yeah, well, I'm familiar with some of it, but I mean, the construction part of it.
I'm only aware of one thing that occurred during construction. As you can see, the dam isn't straight. And that's because during construction they discovered where they were heading for wasn't solid, or wasn't what they needed, so they changed the direction, and that's why the dam has got that angle point in it. That was one of the concerns both districts dealt with the state over the years, along with the fact that, as you can see from these pictures, the dam is a series of walls with and they were concerned about the stability of those walls. So what this project did is it filled in between those walls with a solid structure. So again, it holds the old structure, and the old structure still holds the water. Yeah.
You mentioned that 3:1 ratio of state water. Which one's state water?
Oh, with the recharge project, there'll be 4 parts state water to 1 part recycled water. And that ratio could change over time depending on how the performance goes, because we'll have to monitor TOC and the other different constituents to make sure that the soil does its the treatment that we expect it to do. Gary.
When's there going to be enough frogs to get them off the endangered species?
Good question. I can't say. We do have a local gentleman. I think a lot of you are on his mailing list who brings that up on occasion. But right now, there's 3,000 acres at the south end of the reservoir that are closed to protect that arroyo toad. Will the Forest Service revisit that and maybe make that a little more matched up to where the toads are? I don't know. I would hope so, but I can't say. Okay. If there's no other questions, we can head on down to the bottom. We'll have to probably shuttle people because I don't think the big bus will make it back up. So.
He'll actually be one of the mentors for the next class.
I know it, yeah. What history, huh?
I know, I love it.
Your water was going to be
Do you want to stand or you want to walk?
I'll walk.
Yeah, that might be the ditch that takes the water from Little Rock Creek all the way over to the Palmdale Lake.
We're going to make entry to the dam, a little history of the dam. So of course it was built in 1924. The engineer was John Eastwood. Multiple arch dam, biggest dam in the world at that time, 124 feet. 567 feet to the wide. So during that time it was a 4,200 acre feet capacity, built on a fault line. This is San Andreas, hence the controversy. So there's always been concerns with that. We treat this site, though we monitor it 24/7, we treat it as a confined space, and the reason why is because there's certain gases here, oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, lower explosive limits. I'm in kind of an acronym kind of guy, so if I spit out like H2S, that's hydrogen sulfide, LEL, that's lower explosive limits. So we come in with our gas tech. If you hear this noise, it'll happen in a second. I'm going to ask you to be really calm, really cool, collective, because myself, possibly Dennis, we're going to have to run out past you. Wait, wait. We only do this because for us to save you, we have to save ourselves. We really do. All right, you're not buying that. Hi, I'm Port Kelly. Would you like to get the Port Kelly done? $5 a piece? No? All right. No. So we do this because there is the H2S issue here. And the reason why is because with this amount of people going in, we just want to make sure everybody's safe. We've never lost a body here. We won't talk about the 1980 expedition that there's 5 somewhere in there, we don't know where they're at. But we do have a landline inside the valve house, which is what we're going to after we make entry here. That landline will get you directly out to any site need. It is 911, they'll know where you're at. Let them know we need help. They'll be here in a second. Inside here, and you'll notice down here you have no cell reception. If you do, please let me know who your plan is with, because I want it. I ain't gonna lie to you. So, any questions going in? We're good, let's go. Right?
You first.
Before 2 inch come down right into this area. This now comes into a 36-inch belt valve. This belt valve under highway railroad. The reason why is because if there is an event at the dam, we have to drain it. It will drain $1 million gallons really quick. So that's why we have to have the belt valve. Of course, on this side we have the two 16-inch high step valves. We have these cone valves inside here. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. So the cone valves are regulated through the actuators. This is where it might smell a little bit. So the cone valves are kind of like a plug or a slide valve. They'll actually back and forth. They do tend to, being that's a raw water source, do tend to get items caught in them. Guys love when they have to come down here and clear out things like wood, rope, bikinis, not kidding. We've seen like ice chest stuff. It's kind of weird. It's like styrofoam should float, be gone, but it does go through once it's saturated. So, and of course, if you guys want to go out, I believe I'm opening up the valve, so that gets a little loud and a little stinky. You open? Okay, I'm fluctuating between a part and 3. So it's going to probably go off down there. Once we're all
Started again?
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it fenced off?
The ditch itself is not fenced off. We try and put signs where it crosses roads to keep people from throwing stuff in it, but when we're actually running water, we have to check it a couple times a day to make sure it hasn't been dammed up with mattresses or couches or things worse than that even. Right now the ditch is running just a couple 100 foot off to the south here, and we get up to 40th Street, it crosses underneath Barrel Springs and heads off to the northwest.
So there are some like pipes that it runs underneath roads through.
Oh yeah, there's culverts that it goes underneath roads.
Okay. It's not just purely on land all the way over there.
No, there's a few tunnels between Little Rock Dam and here that it goes through. And then there's a couple sections where it's concrete lined, but most of it is still earthen.
So is 100% of Palmdale water all come from Lake Palmdale?
Okay, the question was, is 100% of our water that we serve come from Palmdale Lake? In a normal year, about 60%. And the other 40% comes from groundwater wells.
Okay.
Which pumps straight into the system, are just dechlorinate.
And nobody else gets that water from the lake?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the Palmdale Lake, we'll try and go around that and talk about it a little bit. But the only water that goes into Palmdale Lake comes from Little Rock Dam or the State Water Project, the AVEK.
And rain.
and whatever rains on it. Yes.
How long do you open up that valve up there? How long do you
The question was, how often do we open up that dump valve? We typically open it up at least probably 4 or 5 times a year to make sure it works. And then when the state comes out and does its inspection, we open it up for that. That's part of the safety requirements, is we have to be able to release the water if there's a problem with the dam. Towards the equestrian park on Barrel Springs. That trail crosses Palmdale Ditch a couple times. You know, so you'll be able to see it when we're running water especially.
Hey Dennis, all these houses up in here, are they attached to Palmdale Water, or do they have their own individual wells?
Yeah, the question was, the houses off to the left, do we serve them? The answer is no right now. They're within our boundaries, but they haven't decided to build a system to serve them. They're all on individual wells or some other means of water. Except for the ones right here by the tank. We do serve about 6 people here. What our boundaries are. We go over to about 70th or 80th Street East. On the north side, we're Avenue P. South side is essentially the forest. And then the west side, most of it is roughly Route 14. We go over into the older part of Antelope, and that's about it. That was because of water quality problems of people that putting stuff in the ditch at the trailer park. Yeah, so right about here, the ditch is coming underneath, and it goes around the trailer park and into the lake. Palmdale Lake is also a sag pond, real similar to that. The difference is, I think it was 1886. They built the dam that made Palmdale Lake bigger. You know, so they're pretty well connected underground, because that's groundwater that's come to the surface because the dam, or the fault, is acting like a dam for it.
Is it true it's bottomless?
Is it true it's bottomless? I don't know. Let's find out. One of our local residents said that there's a river that comes from the Sierras, surfaces there, and then goes down and comes out in Hollywood. So we can check it out.
They were we were paying like well, back then we were probably paying like $250 a pound.
nest or anything?
The trout for the trout. And then out of that, you know, the truck that would come in, you know, we'd get a truck, you know, about 1 truck every other month, and you know, it would hold probably about 25,000 pounds of fish. But a quarter of that, our contract with them, because we were taking everybody else's fish, for a quarter of catfish. Yeah, over there.
Okay,
Catfish Alley, right?
What you see here is our outlet structure from the lake. Acts as the inlet into the treatment plant. And even though that we passed through that monument pretty quickly, the dam that makes Palmdale Lake has been built 3 different times: 1886, 1924, and the last time was in the mid-60s. But here's where the water is taken from the lake into the plant, and you know, we'll see where it starts through the plant later after lunch.
Oh, okay. Better.
What?
Now, one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, in the valley in general is that this is the fin and feathers lake. And in reality, Palmdale Water District owns the lake and the property around it. We lease a good part of it to the club so that there's some access for recreational use. And they use it for fishing, some hunting, trap shooting, those kind of activities.
It's right around 35,000.
And then they get whatever, like 5% of the bills, whatever they sell, or like paint jobs, they have to store. So whatever they sell outside of the beach, they get 5%. And
So like
that
a
fund some of our programs
So they get
as
fed
far
in,
as reducing, water bill for safety barrel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then you'll notice that you can't see anywhere from, but you see the blocks that are there, those are all at certain distances, or so you can shoot at certain distances.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're starting to get a pretty good view of Palmdale Dam right now. It's an earthen dam that was built in mid-60s. It has some special features because we're about to cross over the San Andreas. So an earthen dam that holds water that crosses the San Andreas is kind of a concern of the state. The dam itself was designed to withstand a 26-foot horizontal offset and a 5-foot vertical offset and heal itself and be able to hold water because it has a large clay interior. But we also do a lot of monitoring on this. You saw that facility there that goes up and over the dam. We collect water that seeps under the dam and we pump it back. And we measure how much water that is. And we report that to the state. We also keep track of all the groundwater levels in here and report that to the state. On top of that, there's a series of monuments across the top of the dam that we survey twice a year to make sure everything is staying in place. So the state is very involved in making sure that this is a safe facility. I think earlier this year when Oroville was having problems, there were concerns about spillways. This reservoir it has a controlled inlet, like I said. We control the water that comes in, so we do have a spillway, but it's more of a culvert. We don't need to worry about that. Little Rock, you saw its spillway. There's nothing to worry about there. It's designed actually for the whole dam to be overtopped if need be in a huge storm.
So that's somebody's job. The crowd. I'm surprised they didn't do that for safety over.
Okay, question was how much does Palmdale Lake hold? When it's full, it holds 4,250 acre feet, and each acre foot is roughly 326,000 gallons. On the left side here, I don't know if this is where Palmdale Ditch comes into the lake. The water that you see coming in right now, AVEK is giving us out of the aqueduct, putting it in the lake. We treat that and we give it back to them at the Acton plant there on Sierra Highway. On the right side, we have this diversion ditch that goes around the south and west sides of the lake. That's to keep local runoff from these homes from getting into the lake and hurting the water quality. So this catches all the runoff from these hillsides and takes it off to the east side of Sierra Highway to protect the quality of the water in Palmdale Lake, which ends up being drinking water for our customers. Through Palmdale Ditch here is AVEK water right now.
Okay. It's a really nice, good way.
Yes. Yeah, this, just to explain a little bit more, this is where Little Rock water would come into Palmdale Lake. In our agreement with AVEK to treat some of their water for their Acton customers, we intercept the ditch about where the aqueduct crosses Sierra Highway, and so we put that water into the Palmdale ditch to bring it down to the lake so we can treat it. And we're not going to be able to go all the way around like I was hoping. About another quarter mile or so is where we bring the water in from the aqueduct. And in that building we have a hydro generator or hydro turbine, which provides us about 240 kilowatts of power, which we wire directly into a booster station to help save Edison cost.
Dennis, we got the time to go, just do the long way, go all the way around.
You know, that hydro turbine is one of our renewable sources. You see the wind turbine, that's another big one. That's about nearly a megawatt of power. It's been down most of this year because we've been doing some major maintenance on it. But normally, it saves us over $100,000 a year in cost to run the treatment plant.
Yeah, it has. Well, there's some parts that are coming in.
Through the inside.
Through the inside, but these edges like these stuff.
We're going to take a tour today of the Leslie O. Carter Water Treatment Plant, which is part of the Palmdale Water District. And the water here is treated with carbon. Unlike other water in other systems where ammonia is added, this is one of the largest in this area facilities that use activated charcoal, granulated activated charcoal, GAC.
Where they come in, they're out sampling and doing wells and stuff. So I'll show you around the laboratory. Okay. So what we have over here, this is our laboratory sink where we have running water from different points in the process coming back here all the time, 24/7. The lab uses this to do their sampling, but we as operators also every 2 hours are taking samples and looking for different water quality parameters. For instance, what we'll do is we'll test turbidity. Turbidity is basically a measurement of how many particles are in the water, and it's regulated by the state how much is allowed. It's got to be below 0.30 turbidity. The reason why is because if there's a lot of turbidity in there, that means that other pathogens can be mixed with it, and the chlorine can't kill them if all the rest of the stuff that's in the water is surrounding it. So that's why it's got to be very clear with no other particles so it can kill anything that's in the water that needs to be killed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Then we also, the other thing that we test is for chlorine. And so for us, the way this works is we take a vial of 10 mLs, and this is a calorimeter. I never say it right. And what it's doing is you put in this this reagent here called BPD. You'll see it takes the water and that turns it a pink hue. And so what this machine does is it measures the intensity of that color, and it gives it a value to show how much chlorine residual is left in the water.
So the more chlorine, the pinker it gets?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. So right now it's a 1.19 is what we have, which is it's perfect. That's what we want. And so then this is the effluent water that leaves our plant, and it's going to our clear well, which then will go out to the system for the consumption. The other thing that's very important is temperature, believe it or not, because temperature affects how the process works, how the chemicals react. Things it likes warmer water, chemicals do, rather than colder water. So it also tells us temperature does basically aesthetically how the water's going to taste, because colder water obviously tastes better than warmer water. So we also monitor that as well. Did you see Amanda? Yeah, she just stepped into the ladies' room. Okay. And then after that, we have a pH as well. This is a pH meter here, and we test that as well. The reason why this is important is pH is important because of it shows the corrosiveness of the water. If it's too low of a pH, it'll start attacking the pipes. And it can also attack the pipes of customers, the copper that may be in their house. So we have to keep it at a neutral level, if not just slightly above neutral. So because if we go above neutral, you'll start to actually put a bit of a scale which protects the pipes. So we constantly check that. That's one of the main things.
So above neutral is more alkaline?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that either.
So we're at about we're leaving out about a 7.4,
Okay.
which is good. And then as we go through, we also add a corrosion control chemical in the process as well. And I'll show you where all that's at in the plant and all that good stuff. So that's what me as us as operators check on an every 2-hour basis. Some of the more sophisticated testing, Amanda, when she joins us, she'll go ahead and show you some of that stuff. That's kind of obvious.
Is the 2 hours during the workday, or is that 24/7?
24/7, every 2 hours.
Okay, and those feeds are coming from all over the city of Palmdale?
No, actually from the treatment process here on site.
Oh,
this
okay.
one here is from actually the lake, so we see what we're treating coming from Lake Palmdale. The plant influent, when it actually comes into our plant, settled. This is after all of our chemicals have been added. It's been through 3 of the different processes. We want to see how much reduction in turbidity that we have in particular between the lake and settled ones, so we know how our process is going. Then we have our channel after it goes out of the filters, and this is after it comes out completely after everything.
So that's finished product then?
This is finished, that is correct.
So the first one's straight out of the lake?
That's correct. So we have a submersible pump that pumps it all the way back here. And it has to be running all the time, so we have a representative sample 24/7. What's nice is this also goes to our recycling wash water basin, and then everything gets pumped back up to the lake. So we don't waste any water. So let me introduce you to Amanda Thompson. She is actually the lab supervisor, and she'll go ahead and I'll tell you about the more sophisticated tests that we do.
Thanks.
So my name is Amanda Thompson. I'm Water Quality Regulatory Affairs Supervisor for Palmdale Water District. So I'm also in charge of the lab, and then basically making sure that we meet the federal and state standards, and making sure that we're in regulatory compliance and that the water we produce and provide to our customers is safe. So I think what we'll do is, since Kern's kind of went over this area, I think what we could do is kind of go into more of the lab, and maybe just kind of talk about some of the analysis we do in-house, and then what that means, and kind of the level of frequency that we're monitoring the water. So if you guys want to migrate this way, we'll bring you into our micro lab. Very good. So now that I have you all in here, I'd like to tell you this is where we deal with all of the bacteria in our source water and all that. I like to tell people that after they already come on in here, so they don't have much option.
I'll drink to that.
There you go. So in here, it's relatively clean. We wipe down surfaces and we sterilize any samples that could have bacteria in them. And so this is a pretty clean room, but we keep it separate because we don't want any cross-contamination from anything going on in the rest of the lab. And basically what we're doing here is like, we go around, there's 39 sites throughout our distribution system that we monitor on a weekly basis. And basically we just collect a sample in one of these little bottles. It has a reagent in it that gets rid of the chlorine. We then, when we cut back here, we add a reagent which is basically like food for bacteria, and then we put it in an incubator that's at like 35 degrees C, which is about the internal body temperature of our bodies. And so basically what we're doing is we're taking samples and we're saying, okay, let's get rid of the disinfectant, let's give, if there is any bacteria, let's give it some food, and let's give it a warm body to grow in. And after 24 hours, we check to see if any bacteria is growing. If no bacteria is growing, then our sample stays clear, just like this. If we do have bacteria growing, it turns yellow, like this. This is a control sample, so just so you know, we add bacteria to the sample to make sure that we get the result we're expecting. So it's just kind of a quality control. But when we get a sample, this is positive for total coliform, so bacteria that is known to cause problems, pathogens in our body, is total coliform. If this sample fluoresces, we have a UV light, so since there's not very many of you, I could probably have you guys come over here, and you might be actually, if you're close to the light switches, if you could turn those off.
What was the name of the bacteria chloroform?
It's total coliform, and it's a group of bacteria. And then this one, you can kind of see it fluoresces.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
So the one on the right does not have E. coli in it, and the one on the left has E. coli in it. So if it fluoresces, it lets us know that there's E. coli. If it doesn't fluoresce, then we know that it's just the total coliform bacteria. So these are, again, control samples, so they're not samples. You could feel free to switch that light back on.
I'm going to have to ask you again what the name of the bacteria is, because it sounds like you're saying total chloroform.
Coliform. C-O-L-I-F-O-R-M.
Coliform.
Coliform. Yep.
Total.
Yeah.
Coliform.
Yeah, so it's called total because there's all kinds of different species that will make up that group of bacteria. And so we're looking at all of the bacteria that fills that species. So that's why it's total.
So do you have, and you said that was a controlled, so you have that here in the lab that you can...
Yeah, we purchase the bacteria and then we actually add it to the sample, and then we incubate it in the same procedure that we incubate all our samples. So it's just to make sure that we're getting the results we expect. So if we're getting all absence, like, it's not because our procedure's bad and we can't grow bacteria. Like, what we want to do is we can show that we can grow it if we want to. So that's just one way. That's what we're checking in our distribution system, and we do that weekly, along with making sure that there is proper disinfection out in the system. We also check our surface water, so we would expect there to be bacteria in our surface water, and that's where we use kind of like the same method, but this breaks down into these, they're called different wells, and basically the number of wells that are positive with yellow and also fluoresce gives us a most probable number of density. So it helps us to know how much bacteria is present in our lake. That, for some utilities, that matters because they might alter their treatment process based on how much bacteria is present. So if they don't have a lot of bacteria, then they may not do quite as much extensive treatment. At our treatment plant, because of the level that we're always doing the maximum treatment required. So this number is more just like tracking and making sure that our lake isn't becoming cross-contaminated with anything else. So that's kind of more where that falls into for us. Because this area is kind of a controlled area as well, we use it to measure out reagents and standards. And so we have our balance in here. We do a lot of, like, if we make a standard, we'll be making those things in here. So this is kind of like our micro area, and you're asking good questions. I appreciate it. So is there anyone else who has any questions about bacteria right now? Basically, we're good.
Do you have much trouble? Do you ever have much trouble?
No, not in our distribution system. So in the last 10 years, we haven't had any positive samples in our distribution system at all.
That's good.
If we do experience one, then what we would end up doing is doing a resample to confirm. So we want to make sure it wasn't like a sampler error. And then if it is confirmed and there is E. coli, then we do a 24-hour public notification. So we get on the radio, we get on the, local news, using television, letting everyone know, don't drink the water, boil alert. I would like to avoid that at all costs. So
Yeah, for sure.
can imagine everyone else would like to avoid that also. So we take it very seriously. We make sure, I have 2 lab staff, and they're in charge of collecting samples. They also are in charge of setting up the analysis, and they kind of generate the results, and then my job is to look over those results and make sure that they are appropriate, and then if any action needs to be taken, that we take that action. But we do have 22 wells. I think you guys might have done the tour where you saw some of the well sites, or...
No, they drove that one off.
Man, you got gypped. Just kidding. So we do have...
never seen wells before.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we have wells, and we have the surface water. We monitor the wells on a monthly basis, and occasionally we do have bacteria that are present in our wells, in which case then we shut the well off, we do a disinfection process, and then until it comes back clear, we don't bring it back online. So we're monitoring those on a routine basis as well. So, how are we doing on time? I didn't know how much time we had, so I didn't want to monitor our source water and to monitor our distribution system. And we utilize these instruments. Being able to run things in-house gets us the results quickly, so we can make changes. So if we are monitoring our treatment process, we want to make sure we're removing TOC, and we're not...
What's TOC? Is that...
Total organic carbon. And so total organic carbon, what it is it's basically a precursor. It combines with the chlorine that we add for disinfection, and then the byproduct of that is trihalomethanes, which is a cancer-causing agent. So we obviously don't want to produce too many of those. And so we monitor our organic carbon, and then we monitor the THMs or trihalomethanes that are formed. And by monitoring those things in-house, we can modify our treatment process to make sure that we're maximizing our treatment and that we're keeping those levels low and manageable. Because once those, basically for disinfection byproducts, it's organic carbon, it's bromide, it's time, temperature, and free chlorine. So we have to add free chlorine because that's our disinfectant. We don't have a lot of control over temperature. It's seasonal. We have some control over time, so how long the water sits in our system, we can kind of control that. But TOC is what we can control with the treatment process. And then the disinfection byproducts themselves, THMs, we have a facility at one of our tank sites, so we have an area of our distribution system that has a long detention time, so it's the long time. And we have a system that actually removes those THMs directly. So we're monitoring all areas of our distribution system. We're monitoring the treatment process, and we're trying to keep a good bead on how things are going. And then it also allows us, if we make changes, we can see what the consequences of those changes were. Were they good consequences? Did it help us? Did it not? And if it didn't, then we can make other changes to improve. So these instruments basically just help us to do all of those things.
So now this is a remote monitoring system you have here?
These are actually where we go out, we collect samples, and we come up and we set them up on the instruments themselves.
Okay.
So So they're not like tied in, they're not, I think when you guys do the tour of the treatment plant, you'll see like online instrumentation that monitors like turbidity continuously. These are not those kind of samples. We actually collect them and set them up. Yeah, that was a good question. Any other questions that you guys have? Overloaded you with lots of information.
But I was thinking about when you said that long sitting process where it gets rid of the
THMs, yeah.
THM, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the cancer causing.
That's
a airborne. Is that when it becomes cancer causing?
No, it's more when you're ingesting it, so it's not cancer causing in a vapor form. Actually, I don't know if it is or not, but the concern that we have in drinking water is the levels that are in the water that you're ingesting. So a lot of standards are set based on either short-term effect or long-term effect. So like bacteria is the short-term effect. If you drank water, went out into the lake and just guzzled like a couple gallons of water, you probably wouldn't feel good in a fairly short period of time. It may not have like long-term effects on you, but you like would have stomach discomfort and things like that. Things like the disinfection byproducts or cancer-causing things, those things are more long-term. So if you consume, the way the standard is set is if you consume a certain amount of water every day throughout your life, then what are the chances that it increases your chance of getting cancer? And so that's kind of how those things are set. So they set limits based on the studies that like EPA or state of California like do studies to try to determine where that line is. And so that's something to keep in mind is that whenever anyone says, is the water safe, I feel like the caveat could be that like if we're meeting the standards that are set today. So the standards set today are different than the standards 50 years ago. And I'm sure they will be a lot different than the standards 50 years from now. But to the best of our ability, we are trying to produce the water that is the safest, meeting the standards that are set today. And so I think 100 years ago, our concerns were more about waterborne diseases, bacteria, pathogens that were causing problems. Now, I think more the concern is those long-term effects. And so those are the things that we're trying to monitor as well. So, good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other good questions?
And what he's doing is monitoring what's happening throughout the treatment plant, and what you see over here is our distribution system. This is the city of Palmdale on basically the east side. So here you see my cursor kind of. You'll see underground, which we call it, that's over there off of like Barrel Springs Road up over here. Lower El Camino, Toby.
Sorry about this.
That's okay.
It's in Texas, I ain't going to answer.
No problem. So this is, what's nice about this is it also tells us kind of our pressure zones. Antelope Valley has a lot of, elevation changes. All that makes it a very sophisticated system because obviously these people up here aren't going to have very much pressure because they're up high. But the people down below are going to have a lot more pressure. So we got to make sure that they have pressure up there. So we have hydro-pneumatic tanks like up here for the people that live way up on the hill. We pump the water in there and actually put compressed air in their little tank as well so that they have water pressure in their house. Yeah, that's the only way to do it. Otherwise you're going to have to go way up and put a tank way above them for them to have water pressure.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so we get alarms if stuff like that goes wrong, if the pressure goes down. Pressure is important because anything under 20 psi can cause contamination. Because if there's a break in a pipe or something and then the pressure goes down, then contaminants can get in. So we always are monitoring our pressures to make sure that nothing can get into the pipes if there was ever a break or anything like that.
Oh, so in other words, you don't want anything to siphon back into the pipe and the break.
Yep.
Okay.
We need positive pressure on our side so nothing happens on like inside someone's house or something, and they can send something into the system to get to everyone else. So we monitor that, and we have alarm banners down here and audible and visual alarms that tell us, when something's going on. So here we have all the way over on the east side, 47th Street East, 50th Street East, and even you went to Little Rock Dam, we can control and see what's happening at Little Rock Dam as well. So we use radio to be able to do that. And so it's pretty instantaneous. If I turn this on or off, it's on, like right now. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So this is the distribution system. And here is, if you look over here, this is our treatment plant. And so our operator is monitoring both. This is showing us where what our filters are doing. We have different values and basically how high the filter is, how much water's in it, and also an online measurement of turbidity, or what it's producing clarity-wise at the end, at the bottom of the filter. Once again, if anything gets out of parameters, we get an alarm. And then the operator gets up, physically goes, checks and sees what happened, what's going on. Does the pump go bad? Is it not pumping? Or we lose a chemical? What's going on? That's why we're here. So most of the time, we say that in water treatment, it is hours of boredom that is preceded by minutes of terror. The terror is just when you don't know what's going on. But typically, you just, you know, it's something we've dealt with before, and we haven't had any major issues here. But yeah, we're allowed to go to any point in the plant. This is in our chemical building. These are the feeder pumps for our chlorine. Even our sedimentation basins, where we're going to go later, where we'll see the water actually going through the process. We can monitor the different mixers that we have, our sludge valves, and we can open everything remotely. So it makes it really nice, so you don't have to have a huge personnel cost, because you can do so much remotely. Otherwise, you got to have way more people here to keep going around checking.
Can you monitor that tank down across the freeway from Vincent Hill Station down towards Acton?
That is not in our district.
Ah, that's AVEK.
Yes, yes. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell what this is all about. Up here, we have different graphs and stuff. Everything is trending, and so we can see in trends how things are going in the treatment plant. So that'll tell us a lot. When we see like a big spike or something, it's like, whoa, what just happened there? So a lot of it is just the experience of an operator that knows this place to know when something's not right. And we jump on things before it even becomes a problem. So 24/7, someone's here, always. Even on holidays, we're here. All right, so that's the boring part. Let's go do the fun part. I'll take you through a tour of the plant. We'll see the water coming in and the chemical process. It'll be fun. Dad, come on, keep your head aside. This will obviously come on if we lose Edison power. So it'll shake the building. It'll shake that building when it comes on.
Does it test it now and then? Or?
Oh yeah, every month we test it in the first of the month.
Is it backup generator?
Yes, it is, and it'll take care of all the power for the plant, every process. So.
How do you felt the suspension in my truck? Did I get that under the hood?
Full train. Yeah, it's not diesel. Yeah, 2,000 gallon tank outside gives us about probably 5 to 6 days to be able to run.
Who delivers the diesel?
We just call our provider, whoever does down there at the district office, and they come up here. I don't know the name. We literally fill it probably once a year.
Oh.
Edison Power is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when they do go off, they're off for half hour, an hour. So we only use maybe 30, 40 gallons of diesel to run a place for that short period of time. So,
okay.
Yeah, when this comes on, when you lose power, that's the operator's nightmare, because things don't come back like electronically the way they should sometimes.
Do you have an up system that just powers up?
Up system, what do you mean by that?
Uninterrupted power supply, battery backup?
We do on certain, on our major systems, we do have a UPS on those. Gives us 5-10 minutes, so that we can physically, like we keep having brownouts, we can just click it on and say, I'm not dealing with this brownout stuff right now. Yeah, so we got UPSs out there.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, good enough.
Okay, no problem. No, all the questions you want. Let's go on this way, and I'll show you. We'll start right over here by this tank right here. We use the water in here for backwashing our filters. That's what this tank is for.
Oh wow!
As it can hold 2.5 million gallons of water. So
That pipe comes down this way. Follow me. I'll be walking and talking, so just stop me if you have a question. So when we get over here to that light pole, that pipe takes a turn, starts heading this. What you'll see here, you see chemical room. This is where we house 2 of our chemicals. Actually, you can see the containment areas here. We have caustic soda that we just passed. We use that to raise the pH of the water if it is too low. It typically is too low because this major chemical that we use, ferric chloride, is a very low pH of like a 2. So it drops the pH of the water underneath neutral to 6.5, to about 6.5 to 6.7 sometimes. That's way too aggressive to put out into the water. So we have to raise it with that. What this chemical does is it starts coagulation. All the water that's in, typically that is in the lake that makes it all cloudy is because all those elements in there have a negative charge. So think of it like a magnet. You put negative and negative, it wants to repel. So that's why it won't settle out on its own, because it's just repelling and it will never clump up. It will get stuff out. This chemical has positive ions that go in between the negatives so that they have something to bond to. Once they've bonded, then they get heavy enough to fall out. That's basically water treatment. What we do. We clump it up, settle it out, filter out the rest, disinfect it. That's, if you're going to just get real basic, that's what we're doing. This is the chemical we use, ferric chloride. Okay? You see what it does to things if you look over. It is an iron-based chemical. Look over the containment area.
Oh yeah. Okay.
See the nice orange? Oh, there's orange all over this place. It stays things, but very effective. Very effective. So let's go this way, and we'll go to the where we actually add this chemical and a few others. Oh, down here, it's a little loud. So I'm gonna try to raise my voice. You're gonna hear it echo and stuff in there, so I'll do my best to answer the questions out here. why we're going to add that caustic soda to bring it up above 7. Otherwise, that'll start attacking the pipes. Alright, so this is where the fun starts. That's the ferric. That's that ferric chloride. That's what making that up. By the time we're done, this is a shared channel. So we just raise or lower the weirs and bring the water. We have 5 different what we call basins or trains. There's 3 in here. Look over there, those 2 have 1 train. The other building has 2. So we can produce 35 million gallons a day. So we can put 7 million into each one. So depending on how much we're producing, how many of these we can have.
Are each one of these trains rated the same as well coming off that same pipe?
Okay, that's correct. So over here, we already did what's called coagulation. We added that chemical. It's all the chemistry that's happening, that's coagulation. Now we're doing flocculation. What flocculation means is mixing. We need all these particles to continue to collide with one another so they get heavy enough to settle. So what we do is we have 3 mixers at different intensities of speed. Now, we start looking at it. You see it's starting to like form a kind of little bit white right there. That's the particles starting to come together. That's nothing. As we go here, we'll start going slower and slower on our mixing. And you'll see the particles get bigger. I'll show you. See it starting to form bigger. That's called a gate. It's a baffle wall made of redwood. So it's got holes in it to make sure the water comes through uniformly and it doesn't short circuit.
Okay.
Because we need it all to collide. We can't have a stream going through. So this is one side. Now this is the 3rd stage when we go slow. See what it looks like over here.
How much does that redwood need to be replaced? That looks like it would be tough to do.
That's been there, what, 20 years probably? Since the redwood baffles have been here since... Probably since 87. When we built it, yeah. That's good. So then we come over here. Enough that once we stop mixing it and keeping it in suspension, it will be heavy enough to start falling out. And that's where this big long basin right here comes into play. That's called a sedimentation basin. We just want it to fall and sediment to get to the bottom, and then we scrape all that junk out. The water that's on top continues to go, and then we get a cleaner water, of course, because the sediment's at the bottom.
Is that what the different channels are for? So you're shoveling down to clean the sediment out on each one? Okay.
Yeah, we have to do that sometimes. Sometimes it overcomes it so great, you gotta shut down. It takes about a day to clean out. We get fire hoses and blow it out.
Oh, okay. You don't suck it out? You don't use a vacuum?
In the meantime, there's equipment down there that's moving it towards the channel and pumping it out.
Oh.
So it's only when it gets beyond that.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what this is. I'll show you. I wish I had one empty, but it's better to see it empty. This is a hydraulic ram. This is connected down about 10, 12 feet to a bunch of plates that go the width. There's probably, I don't know, 100 plates that are 4 inches tall, and they're set like this, they're scrapers. So the ram pushes the scrapers because it's at an angle through the sludge, fast, cut through, and it pulls it back slowly. pulls everything back here to a drain that's underneath that field. That's how this is. So from here, we pump it to, or it goes to a sludge river, where we let everything, we decant the water, and only the solids are left, and we dry it out. And then we truck it out. That's what we do right now. Because there's iron in it, sometimes, nurseries can use it, but fertilizer. And all we're doing is selling organics. So that's the question. Yes, that's what we're doing. So we're going to go down here to the end. I'm going to show you what those plates are right there. That's pretty cool. Headquarters.
What's this stuff floating on the top?
What is this? Yeah. Well, it's still like some leftover accumulation, like that's some ferric that just never settled. And that happens sometimes.
Okay.
And it's just stuff that's coming from the lake that won't settle out because it's too big. But we'll filter it out.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll filter it out. But you can see what it's doing. If you come here, just kind of follow the light. It's kind of cool. You'll see it as we go. Like, come walk with me and you'll see it. All of a sudden, you'll see how it's starting to get heavier because it's all colliding. And then it'll just disappear because it fell.
Alright.
See how it's getting thinner?
Yep.
Can't see it hardly. And then boom, it's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Because it got so heavy.
So it's getting back there.
Yeah.
And it's typical that it happens right around that same area?
Yeah, we like it sometimes to be a little further down, but we just want it to get down there. Wherever it gets down, that's fine. So they'll stick to the plate, get heavy enough and fall out. So it's basically doubling the length using engineering. Really, really cool. So now from here, we're going to go to the filter. And
what are the flock plates made out of?
Stainless steel.
Okay.
These are standard.
Okay.
All right, let's go this way. We'll go to the filter.
Yeah, we worked together a long time ago. Contractors. We were working out there Beach.
Okay.
Real good job.
Yeah, we thought the water was clear, right? When we looked in that tube, this was still in there. All this scum on top, that's still some residue of that ferric chloride that was in there, plus some other stuff. The reason why it came up is because we also add chlorine inside of there to help the process. It helps season the filters so that they work better, but it also takes the ferric out of solution. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to stay in the water and go through the process. So we can stop it right here. And then, so at the bottom of this is about 10 feet of water, 9 to 10 feet. And at the bottom, you'll see this. This is a representation of what our filters look like. Silica sand, there's a foot of it, and there's 3 feet of anthracite coal. Anthracite. It's a very, very unique coal. Like charcoal. Yeah, exactly. Now, it's used because of its adsorptive qualities. Basically, things like to attach to the outside of it. Absorption, bring it inside. Adsorption is it clings to the outside. It has a lot of surface area.
So the difference is a D and a B.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And the D it's on the outside.
Right.
It has to be on the outside because it's going to get so plugged up in the first probably, I don't know, 8 inches to a foot that no more water is going to go through, and that's when we're backwashing. We send about 7,000 to 8,000 gallons per minute up through the bottom, expand the media, and then it scours all the outside that the particles attach to, and then cleans it up for the next round. You get about 60 to 100 hours, basically, out of a run of a filter.
Is this the same stuff that I use in an aquarium? Same type of charcoal?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Now we have another sort of coal that we use called, or carbon, called GAC. When we get over there, I'll explain that, because that's even more special than this stuff.
Okay.
But this is natural. It's just pulverized into a certain coefficient or a certain size. That's all equal, so it works well.
Is this also a sample of the filter? I mean, the tube. Is that what the filter is made out of?
This is exactly what it looks like.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The size and everything. So all the water is only going through this much. Believe it or not, 4 feet is enough.
So
to
when
clean the water.
when you on either end of that filter where you got the caps, is there a screen or a mesh or?
There is an under drain on the bottom, and they got nozzles at the bottom that allow water to go through without the silica sand going through.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it works.
And back flushing is about the same way?
Yeah, it comes up through those same nozzles, but just backwards on up.
Okay.
That's how that works.
Okay.
Yep. So now, we'll go downstairs. I'll show you the gallery where the piping for all this is real quick, and show you the online turbidity meter, how we measure what's actually at the bottom of this to make sure it's clean.
Okay. I didn't see what the sprinklers are for.
Oh, that's because you get a bunch of junk on the sidewalls. Sprinklers just come on to help kind of get that off the sidewalls.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just cakes up, and it can actually ruin the concrete.
Okay.
Stuff that stays there forever. The water that was coming from that building is actually now above our heads. It comes in through these pipes that opens up and lets water into the filter. At which point the water clears, that goes over, and then the water just using the pressure from the level, the head, just comes all right on down. What we have here is what we call turbidity meters, like we talked about in there. The state of California says we have to be below 0.30 turbidity meters. If you look here, we're running right now at 0.05. So we far exceed what the state says we have to do.
Well, how does the sensor work that checks turbidity? Is it use light?
Very good. Good question. That is correct. So it has a cell inside. That's glass. It knows it has a light beam that goes through one way. It knows how much it's sending through, and it takes the difference between what gets to the other side versus what it's sent. Because if there's any particles in there, they're going to refract the light, and then only so much is going to get to the other side. That's the technology they use to use they call it a turbidity unit. It's a long name, I think. I'm done taking tests. I don't want to know.
All I know is that's the way smoke detectors work.
Oh, using light? Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. So we have 12 filters for redundancy. When it's the summertime, they're all rolling. When it's the wintertime, sometimes we only use 4 or 5, depending on whatever the demand is that the city needs. And so you see, if you go down there, all 12 of them look exactly like this. So this is it. This is, when you look at the filter, this little line right here is the start of the under drain. So this is all the clean water, and that's what it's tapping into. And this runs 24/7 to make sure that this is always underneath the parameters that we set it at. If it gets above it, we get an alarm, and figure out what's going on. That's it. That's the filter gallery. Now I'm going to take you to the chemical room. So we're going to come back up the stairs to the deck and go back onto the street. Our main chemical building. We went by our coagulant that's over there, that other building. But here is where we have pretty much the rest of our chemicals. Over here, these 4 tanks all hold the same thing, and that is sodium hypochlorite, or basically chlorine. This is where we store it. Not only do we store it, but we can make our own chlorine here as well.
Oh.
I'll show you that in our this generator that's over here a little later. We'll walk down here and I'll show you how to make it. Pretty cool. What you see over here is our corrosion control chemical called zinc orthophosphate. What it does, the orthophosphate puts a protective layer around the pipes in the system so that if there is any aggressiveness in the water, it attacks the scale and not the metal pipe. So it saves the pipes and also saves people from drinking the metal, you know, stuff that.
It's food for the asshole.
What's that?
It's like food for the.
Yeah, it eats that.
Is that the same as
the sacrificial animal?
Is that, yeah, that's like a galvanized fence. Okay.
Yeah, so it eats the zinc, because that's, you know, real soft. It eats that instead of the steel pipes. Okay. And so over here is a polymer that we use. In that first place that we went downstairs where we inject all the chemicals, we actually feed the chemical from here all the way down there. We have PVC pipes running all throughout the ground. What's the polymer? It adds more positive charges to the water. Because remember, we have all those negative ones that are repelling each other coming from the lake. This adds more positive ones to the treated water. No, to the raw water. Yes, all this is this. That's why we have the brown water. So that's the reason why we got to use something like this. We can't keep using like the ferric chloride because it'll drop the pH way too low. So these man-made polymers, they don't mess with pH or anything, and they're very effective at very, very low doses. So that's why we use it.
Is it more expensive?
Extremely. Very expensive. Okay. And it's all proprietary, and they never tell you the magic that's in it and all that.
I don't want to know.
Stuff works.
Yeah.
Let's go this way. I'll show you now our going So we're kind of one on the first. We first, we're supposed to actually generate our own chlorine as a water agency. What year was this? This came 2000?
We first put a system in place like 98.
And so this is one of one from, or one of our limited made from Quartz. So what this does is it takes from this tank, we add salt to it. We take about, it's about 25 tons of salt per delivery, put it into that tank. We add softened water to it, and it creates a saltwater brine. The brine is pumped into here at a certain rate, along with more water. Then we do electrolysis, send electricity through these plates, and byproducts are sodium hypochlorite and hydrogen. We get rid of the hydrogen out of the tank, and what's left is the liquid chlorine. We can adjust the concentration of the chemical based off of how much brine and how much water. So we've been doing this for, what's that, 18 years now, making our own solution.
Is it nitrogen or gas?
Hydrogen. It's a gas form. Yeah, it's a gas form. I may have said hydrogen. I'm sorry if I did. Hydrogen. So it's all trapped in there. So what we do when we turn this on, there's blowers that blow air into the tank, so it pushes the hydrogen out. You see it goes out to the top, so it goes in the atmosphere. It's not enough to hurt anything in the current environment. Yeah.
As long as it goes out.
Yeah. Sometimes it hasn't went out and it's been in the past. Yeah, one day we might be collecting that hydrogen and using it for energy. Things are going better. So I'll turn it on and I'll kind of look and see the reaction.
Okay.
It happens. It's pretty cool.
This is hard, but huge.
But what we'll have to do, I'll have to come around this way. This side is disabled.
Yeah, most of our well sites are like that big. Yeah, I was gonna say our cells. This thing, we do the salt.
But salt doesn't have chlorine in it. Does that make sense? Salt is an element.
Yes, it's an element. I realize it's a mineral. What's the compound of salt? Do you know?
Na. There's no compounds. Na. That's the element. So when you add the water in the electrolysis, it becomes NaOCl.
Okay.
See that right there? That's the chemistry of it.
Okay.
So it's still, so the chlorine has sodium in it, and and it's the byproduct of the chlorine that makes it granular.
Okay.
And then the hydrogen, which you got what, H2O that was in with it.
Right.
That H goes out.
Okay. So the oxygen and the Na combine to make.
Yep. So you have the Na and you have the O from the water. The H left. And then the electrolysis made the Cl.
Okay.
And that's how you get NaOCl. That's how mine.
You're just trying to keep up with it.
Let me turn it on. Hydrogen gets itself out. Starting to come in, the salt water, brine, and the water are making their way into the cell. Now you're going to see the chemical reaction once the rectifier starts electrocuting.
So it's a DC.
That's
DC.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. 850 amps and about 100 volts. DC 850. Alright, now you see what's happening. The white's the hydrogen gas. That's what's going to escape in the atmosphere. And the liquid that's left over after electrolysis is the chlorine.
Is this the hydrogen being siphoned out?
These things are about so this is pump the brine, that's what you're hearing. It just needs
is that the hydrogen getting pumped out right there?
That's the liquid, but it has a hydrogen in the liquid. It's all here. But it all dissipates in there and separates. So that's it. That's how we make the chlorine.
Where's the converter for? The inverter for that?
That's the rectifier. So it takes a 480 and turns it to 160. Okay, so let's go to the next area. I'm going to take you to the GAC contactors, the carbon contactors that
GAC, tell me what that is again.
Okay, when we get up here, I'll explain it all.
How come you guys don't call it GAC?
That is actually the term that was used. Gas. You'll hear that in the vacuum. Okay, so let's come over here. So, the water that came from the bottom of those filters when we were down there, comes down a pipe and gets pumped into these. This is our final step. The water from the filters, perfectly safe to drink. Nothing wrong with it. We saw what the turbidity is. If you add chlorine to it, we're good to go. The problem is because the regulations have got more strict, there's those disinfection byproducts that are too hot. So what we have to do, like Amanda talked about in the lab, when it comes to those disinfection byproducts,
TMO?
TH. You got the T right. Is you have to get rid, basically, you got to deal with the time issue, and if you can't deal with that, you got to either get rid of the organics or get rid of the chlorine, one or the other. Now, if you decide to get rid of the chlorine, it means you have to use chloramines, which is, believe it or not, using more chlorine in addition of ammonia. So you're adding another contaminant to the water.
You know, chlorine and ammonia does.
Yeah. But at the right ratio, it disinfects water very effectively. However, if you use dialysis or have any fish, it'll kill the fish, and you can't use in dialysis. So that's you know, it's not good. So our board of directors years ago decided to go the route, even though it's expensive, of getting rid of the organics, so we can continue to use free chlorine, which is much more effective of a disinfectant, and you use less of it as compared to the chlorines. So what you do is use this GAC, or granulated activated carbon, to remove the organics in the water. This stuff's basically carbon that has been blown up into like powdered, and then they re-agglomerate it or glue it back together. And when they do that, it creates so much surface area that all those organics want to attach to it. One handful of GAC is about the surface area of a soccer field. There is 120,000 pounds of GAC. That's how much each of these contractors takes. This is a solid 8 feet of carbon. Unfortunately, it is expensive. It's about $220,000 per changeout. And we've got that price down actually, I think under that now with like 180, 190,000 per changeout with the long-term contract. But what it does, the reason why this stuff is so amazing, not only does it get rid of organics, it gets rid of pharmaceuticals, and it's the best available technology for most of the contaminants that are not only here now, but in the future that we don't even know about. This is still the best available technology. So on the West Coast, this is one of the biggest places on the West Coast that uses GAC technology to this extent. This is basically a huge Brita filter.
Right.
That's all it is. That's what they put in your refrigerator filters.
Right.
GAC. It removes the chlorine, removes all that. Removes it.
So there is no back flush in this system.
We do, but only for turbidity. Now here's the thing about GAC. Once the organics attach themselves to it, you're not going to strip them off using water. You have to kiln fire it. I think it's like 1,800 degrees, 2,000 degrees. So that's why they have to take it out and they truck it out, send it to their place in, I think it's Northern California, fire it in their kilns, and bring it back to us.
Do they truck it out moist?
It's moist when they bring it out. That's why they have this huge hurricane pump that they call it. But then the water drains itself out. That's why they're in those bags.
Okay.
They're kind of perforated.
So those are ready to go back to the kiln.
Yep. Yep. And so the one way over there that's open with the other fencing around it, that's the one that's being removed. So once, and that's where Amanda's tests in the lab before the TOC, that tells us when it's time. When it's not removing TOC anymore, that means it's time to go. And you fire it and you bring it back. And so they tag it and make sure that only our carbon comes back to us. They don't mix it with no one else's carbon, so that there's no contaminants from any other area or place come back to us on accident. Whatever's here stays here, and then they bring 20% virgin along with it. Because when you put that much heat on it, some of it gets lost. So that's the beauty and magic of the GAC. And this is what sets us apart with the best water quality that you could ever hope for.
Does the carbon have a activation life? How many times can it be recycled? But you're adding 20 new every time.
Exactly. So indefinitely, because you're adding the 20 new. Because I believe it is about 5. If you were to just keep using the same one, it's about 5 times.
I see.
So that's where the 20%, it's always, you just keep using the same stuff. Yeah, good question. So, did I leave anything out? Yes? Okay. So that's it for the tour. Across the street, after we're done here, because remember this removes chlorine, we got to add chlorine at the end of this. So just like you saw at the bottom of those filters, there's like an under drain. Same thing, looks exactly the same on the bottom of these two. The water leaves here, we add the chlorine, and it goes over to that clear well across the street, that big tank that you've probably passed by millions of times. It holds 6 million gallons of water. It ensures that the water will stay in there for about 2 hours, so the chlorine can interact and kill any of the pathogens that are left in the water. From there, it gets boosted to wherever it needs to go to the city.
But your other tanks throughout the city are not using this process. They're pumping water.
Those tanks are surface water, or it is the groundwater that has been blended with it that we do put into the system.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
But you don't have to worry about the disinfection byproducts because there's no organics in groundwater. Because we're doing surface water and you get all the algae and all the stuff growing in that lake, There's so many organics, that's why that chlorine reacts with it.
Right.
The groundwater, you don't have that problem.
Right.
So that's why we can mix the two.
So the only thing you'd have to add would be chlorine at the tank,
Yep.
out near the tank.
Or actually when it comes out of the well and goes out into the pipe, just add a little bit there.
I see.
And then there's different sample spots all throughout the city that weekly we go and test those for chlorine residual, for coliform, which is the stuff that gives you stomach aches, E. coli, stuff like that. We test that every week. Different strategic parts of the city.
Right.
So how deep did you say the gap was?
8 feet of media.
Okay.
I believe it is about 18 feet deep, the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, about that.
And then does it sit on a sieve or a grate or?
Nope, sits on a concrete, just like over there.
Okay.
Filter sits on a concrete floor that has the nozzles.
Oh, okay.
The nozzles either accept the water or spray the water if we're going to do it backwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. 1,000 hours or so is what we do. And that's 1,000 hours at I'd say at about 20 million gallons. It depends because we have different combinations of different ones on at any given time. Because some are, if they're fresh, they remove a ton of TOC. Some at the end of their life, they don't do as much. So what we do is we just kind of blend the two to get the amount we're looking for to extend the life of everything. But about 1,000. Takes about 1 million gallons of water almost to backwash one of these.
Does that go back into the lake?
Yep, sure does. It goes down to what we call a wash water basin that has return pumps and set it right on that. Yep, and we retreat it. Any other questions? All right, cool. Well, we can head on back.